Hey everybody, Dirili here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hakuouki Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. We are on Okita Souji's route. Not very far along yet because it's only our second video, so let's hop right into it. You can just sit back, relax, and let me read you a story. There was no doubt that what I was hearing was not meant for me. Yeah, I was hearing them talking about the Furies. I shoved my fingers into my ears and closed my eyes tight. The best I could do was to make sure I didn't hear anything more.
Oh? What are you doing here, Yukimura?
My eyes flew open to see Kondo standing in front of me. I couldn't just sit there. I told him the truth about how I'd felt so useless and left my room to find a way to help.
Oh, of course, I see. I know how you feel. The men are pretty excited, aren't they?
Yes. Excited? I would say bloodthirsty.
Would you care to join us?
What? That was not what I expected him to say. You mean go on a raid with you? I don't know what I could...
Well, we could certainly use a messenger, but if you'd rather not, there's no need to feel obligated.
Of course, the chief was only taking 10 soldiers. Well, alright. If I'll just be a messenger. His face split into a grin, and that was how I found myself on the way to Ikeda Inn to accompany the Shinsengumi on their raid. Hour of the Dog. After we arrived at Ikeda, I was sent off on several short errands nearby. I returned to hear Nagakura talking to Okita.
Well, sure looks like we hit the jackpot on this one. Not sure if they're brave or stupid for being right next to a government building.
Oh, I knew they'd be here. After all, they've always met at Ikeda before. Well, why didn't everybody else know that?
Sure, but the night Furutaka gets arrested? That just seems sloppy to me. I mean, why not meet somewhere else? Any normal person would worry someone was onto them.
Well, obviously, somewhat less than normal. After all, they are meeting at Ikeda Inn, aren't they? But for the subject matter, it could have been any conversation between Nagakura and Okita. Perhaps the Choshu were trying to trick the Shinsengumi. I certainly wouldn't have known. Whatever the reason for their behavior, however, it didn't seem to have Nagakura or Okita particularly worried. Heisuke noticed me as I approached and jogged over. Yeah, those two probably would have been happy just taking the whole place down by themselves.
So, how'd it go? Did you see anyone from Aizu or the Judiciary Commissioner?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really see much of anyone nearby. He frowned and grunted unhappily to himself.
So they still haven't made their move. We told them even before it started to get dark.
Settle down, Heisuke.
The larger man smacked Heisuke playfully on the shoulder with a bark of laughter. Oh, don't make him mad.
Besides, it's not like they'd do us any good if they did show up. If this is gonna happen, we've got to do it ourselves.
Yeah, I guess. It's just, don't you think running in on our own is a little reckless?
His words must have made sense to someone, because we decided to wait for reinforcements. I'm not getting sent to fetch the reinforcements this time. We waited for quite some time, but they never appeared. Hour of the Boar, I looked up at the sky. The moon had moved a good part of its way across the sky since we arrived at Ikeda Inn. I didn't know they waited so long.
Damn it, it's getting pretty late.
Well, what do you want to do, Kondo? It'd be pretty lame if we just sat here all night and did nothing. The chief had been quiet for the last several hours, but when Okita spoke, he stood up and laid his hand on my shoulder.
Yukimura, can you stay away from the Ikeda Inn?
No.
Things are going to get dangerous. The place is full of rebel soldiers. We don't intend to allow them to escape, but better safe than sorry.
Then he stood up, gave me a smile, and ran into the inn. Oh, that's it? So just charge? I don't even have time to get away!
We are the Shinsengumi, retainers of the Lieutenant General of the Aizu Domain. By imperial decree, you are all under arrest.
The words were scarcely out of his mouth when a cacophony of yells and screams erupted out of the inn. Giving the enemy a good loud warning he's about to kick the tar out of them. Well, that's Kondo for you. Okita gave a bark of laughter as he made his own way toward the inn.
Seems like good form anyway. It's polite to let them know what they're up against.
Oh, so your definition of good form is putting us at a disadvantage?
Heisuke and Nagakura grinned at one another as they too sauntered toward the inn.
We act with the authority of the government. Resist, and you will be shown no mercy.
Then the battle began in earnest. The yells of men and the clangs of swords filled the air, rolling out through the doors and windows of the inn. I could hear the feet pound upstairs, the screams of men dying, the wet thud of bodies dropping to the floor. So apparently I didn't listen to Kondo, and I didn't stay away from the inn. I'm still right there, right outside of it.
Damn it, there's too many of them. We need backup. Is there anybody still out there?
Well, there was someone, but all the men who'd come with the captains had to run around to go in the back and couldn't hear Nagakura. Even if they could have, I heard sounds of battle coming from the back of the inn as well. What should I do? The only person left to go help them was me, but even if I did, what could I do? That was when I heard Kondo.
Souji, are you alright?
Then Nagakura called out from a different part of the inn.
Damn it, Heisuke, don't die on me.
Oh no! I had no desire to go into a building full of men trying their best to kill one another. Even if I did, I had no illusions about my skill with a blade. I was sure to be killed before I'd even drawn it. But I could hardly sit by and do nothing. Perhaps if I couldn't fight, I could rescue the wounded, find them and carry them out of the inn. Or drag them, at least. I don't think you could carry any of them. My mind was made up. I steeled myself and ran inside. Inside it was pitch black. The smell of fresh blood hit me in the stomach like a fist. The air reeked of it. There were dark lumps on the floor everywhere, the bodies of fallen men. Where was Okita and Heisuke? It had sounded like a good idea at the time, but as I looked around that charnel house, I realized that there was no way I could possibly carry 2 men outside. I had to choose. I will look for Okita, of course. I decided I had to look for Okita. I'm coming, baby! I knew I had caused trouble for him during the afternoon patrols, but he never called me out for it. He likes trouble. It seemed only fair that I try to return the favor in some way.
Gah.
Ah! A Ronin exploded out of nowhere, falling down the stairs and screaming. My Kodachi was in my hand before I'd even realized I'd drawn it. They should have some instinct. He was halfway up when Kondo's sword slid through his heart. Ah! I just watched a man die.
You! What are the rest of our men doing?
Fighting and dying? And don't call me you, I have a name, you know. He did his best to keep his tone calm, but I could tell my appearance had both surprised and worried him.
I'm sorry, but can you go see the Souji? He's upstairs with one of those damnable Ronin. I doubt he'll lose, but he could still be hurt. His opponent looks to be a difficult one.
Yes, not just a Ronin, he's up against a demon. Yes, sir. I nodded quickly and ran off through the carnage. He's upstairs! I took them 2 at a time and landed hard on the top floor. It didn't take long to spot him. Oh! Only feet from Okita, locked in battle with a Ronin, I felt my stomach lurch. The cold ring of steel against steel tore through the air, and their blades flashed lines of light in the darkness.
Is that the best you can manage?
The strange Ronin's eyes narrowed, and his mouth curved into a smug smile. Oh yeah, I think we're going for you next, Chikage. You are just too beautiful to ignore. I'd seen Okita train with the soldiers, and his skill with the blade had been clear, but this Ronin... The way he dodged, parried, and slowly drove Okita back seemed almost lazy.
Well, I think that's about enough of that. It's time I was off. Try and follow and you won't get any mercy from me.
The blood and violence that was choking the inn had no effect on him, it seemed. He was so peaceful, in fact, that he hardly looked as though he belonged in the middle of all that carnage.
Sorry, pal, but I can't do that. You're our enemy, so you gotta die.
A smile split his face for half a second, then he launched himself at the Ronin. Their swords slammed together. I hadn't watched them fight for long, but to my untrained eye, it looked as though the Ronin was a self-taught swordsman. His sword moved in large, crude arcs, while Okita responded with skill and finesse. In a contest of skill, Okita would have been the clear winner, but... as their blades sprang apart. It was always Okita who found himself pushed back. The Ronin sword was heavy but fast. It was clear that he was Okita's superior in raw power. The summer heat had turned the air thick and humid. I could barely breathe. Sweat poured down my spine and beaded on my face as fast as I could wipe it off. I decided to distract the Ronin. To look around the room. I mean, I'm sure that by look around the room they meant trying to find something I could use, but it just makes it seem like I'm just not going to look at this battle here. I'm going to pretend I don't notice this going on. Alright, so I decided to distract the Ronin. Should I flash him? Nearby, a bowl sat unattended on the floor. If I could use that to distract the Ronin for a moment, I knew that would give Okita the opening he needed. I trusted him. With every ounce of strength I had, I hurled the bowl straight at the Ronin.
Oh?
Almost without thinking, he turned his blade and smashed the bowl to the floor. The moment of distraction gave Okita his opening. He leapt forward. Even caught off guard, the Ronin managed to get his blade up in time, but the blow sent him stumbling back a step or two, an angry look on his face. As Okita lifted his sword to point it at his opponent, he whispered in a voice so quietly only I could hear it.
Good job, Chizuru.
I knew— oh, petals! Love points. Love is blossoming. I knew it wasn't time to bring it up, but I was happy to know I'd been able to help.
Pathetic.
The strange Ronin's sword whipped through the air, little more than a silvery blur. Okita caught each blow as best he could, but a particularly powerful strike from above was too much for his skill to counter, and he stumbled. Though he might not have shared Okita's skill, the Ronin was no fool, and Okita had given him an opening even a child could exploit.
Ugh.
The Ronin's foot connected with the center of Okita's chest. Whatever the source of his tremendous strength was, it apparently extended to his legs as well as his sword arm. I thought I heard a wet crunch as the kit connected and Okita tumbled across the floor of the room. When at last he stopped, I saw him grip his chest with one hand and cough. Blood. Okita! I leapt across the room. Are you alright? His face was tight with pain, and the most he seemed to be able to manage were labored gasps and wet, tearing coughs. Okita was in no condition to fight. As I struggled to move myself under his arm to lift him up, I glared at the strange Ronin.
Do you mean to try and stop me as well? Fight me if you wish. I have no compunctions about killing a child.
I watched the tip of his blade drift up to point straight at me. With a groan of pain, Okita lifted himself up and stumbled between me and the Ronin. No, Okita, you can't! There was a good chance he had broken bones, and if he was coughing up blood, then his internal organs could be damaged as well. He could barely stand, let alone fight, and he had to have known it just as well as I did. But he stood firm.
You're fighting me, right? Leave the kid alone.
The Ronin sneered.
What a fool. Just what do you intend to do? You're wounded, possibly fatally. You can scarcely stand.
Shut up! I still got some fight left, you bastard.
As he shouted, new flecks of blood appeared on Okita's lips. Stop that! You're still coughing up blood! The Ronin regarded us with cool, disinterested eyes for a few moments, then in one smooth motion lifted his sword and slid it home in its scabbard. Oh, that's an insult. We're not worth his time. What? Don't question it, just be happy.
The moment their meeting was interrupted, my business here was at an end.
His voice was as cool and aloof as his eyes. He lifted one foot to the broken windowsill and leapt out into the thick night air. He ran? No, he hadn't run. He was letting us go.
Damn it. I can still fight.
Okita! His voice was weak. Why did you do that? Okita turned his head to look at me. You always said you'd kill me if I got in your way. He changed his mind. So, why had he protected me? He raised a shaky eyebrow.
Huh? Yeah. Why did I do that?
His words were already beginning to slur.
I'll figure that out later. But I really gotta kill that.
Okita! His eyes fluttered, and his body sort of folded as he collapsed to the floor. Huh? I'd been so worried about Okita, I hadn't noticed. The sound of screaming men and clattering swords had disappeared. Is it over? The moment the words were out of my mouth, I heard the sound of labored footsteps on the stairs. And skipping. And this time we have to choose a will stay behind instead of one to come. I'll stay behind. The last thing I wanted to do was be in the way. Besides, how could I justify participating when I wasn't even a true member of the Shinsengumi? A few days passed. Your medicine's ready. The tray I was carrying held medicine and some hot sake. The medicine was Ishido medicinal powder, which was manufactured by Hijikata's family.
Give that to Souji and Heisuke, and Sanin while you're at it.
Sanin's eyebrows rose at the mention of his name.
Oh, do you really think I need this? My injuries have already healed.
Just give it a shot, Sanin. They say this stuff works on just about anything.
Sanin rolled his eyes, but reached over to take his portion of medicine and sake. He had been telling the truth, though. His injuries had healed, at least as much as they were going to, but his arms still refused to work properly. It was slowly becoming clear that it would probably never work properly again.
Man, that Ishido powder with hot sake is the best. I'm jealous of you guys.
Then why don't you have some? You're still hurt, aren't you?
Nagakura had been injured at the Ikeda Inn, but he'd recently declared that he was completely healed, despite the fact that his wounds still looked rather painful. Nonetheless, he continued his normal training, and even went on his rounds every day. I'd heard that he convinced Hijikata that his wounds weren't as bad as Okita or Heisuke's.
I would have never thought that Todo or Okita would return from the fight injured.
That's only because it was so dark in there. It wasn't a fair fight, okay? He came out of nowhere, and he broke my head guard right in half.
He split it in half just by punching it? That's pretty damn impressive.
Heisuke muttered something angry and unpleasant under his breath, but Harada just laughed.
I heard one of them got away from you, Okita.
Okita only smiled quietly as Nagakura gestured toward him.
It won't happen again.
Before long, they were all sharing their stories of what had happened at the Ikeda Inn, with their exploits increasing as the sake decreased. Only Saito remained silent. I would expect that from him. Is there something bothering you? I kept my voice low so as not to interrupt any of the other men and their conversations.
I've been thinking, why were there men strong enough to defeat Souji at Ikeda? They claim not to be members of the Choshu, but I've no doubt the proprietors of the inn wouldn't have allowed just anyone in that night.
Oh. I hadn't thought about it before, but he was right. If the Choshu were having a secret meeting, then of course they would have had someone watching who came and went.
If they entered undetected, it begs the question of how, in addition to why.
Was he suggesting that perhaps they'd infiltrated the inn long before the Shinsengumi arrived?
I suppose we all know for sure. I suppose all we know for sure is that these two men are possessed of impressive strength and skill.
No sooner had Saito finished speaking than the door slid open and Kondo appeared.
We have received orders from the Aizu domain.
All conversation immediately ceased, and all eyes turned toward Kondo.
In preparation for a Choshu attack, the Shinsengumi has been ordered to the front.
A cheer went up from everyone present.
Finally! It's about goddamn time!
Too bad for you, Heisuke.
Can't go and fight if you're injured, can you?
What? Come on, this is different!
He turned to Hijikata, clearly hoping that the commander might give him a special leave to go.
No, it's not. You'll stay here and guard our headquarters.
His tone was as cold and final as a steel door slamming shut.
What? You're a real monster, Hijikata, you know that. A demon.
Did you just ask me to gut you? Because that's what I heard.
Heisuke's mouth snapped shut. I didn't think Hijikata would actually stab one of his own men, but neither did I think he would go easy on any of them, even if they were injured.
The injured are a burden, so we shall remain here and guard the compound like obedient soldiers.
Sanen's bitter smile had no trace of warmth. Heisuke only sighed.
I guess I'll have to pass too. I'd like to go, but I'm not 100% yet.
Oh, Souji. He did his best to sound nonchalant, but there was no hiding the bitter disappointment beneath his words. I assume I'll be staying as well? Kondo nodded.
Yes, I'll need you to keep an eye on Heisuke and Souji. I don't want them moping around like pouty children.
So what, I'm supposed to cheer them up? He let out a short laugh, and several of the men grinned. Am I supposed to entertain them? Before long, the Shinsengumi left for the front, leaving only a handful of soldiers in the silent compound. If I leave my room now, then I shouldn't get in trouble. After all, it seemed awfully unlikely I would bump into one of the rank-and-file soldiers. But even if I did leave, where would I go? Oh, right. Kondo would ask me to keep an eye on Okita and Heisuke. I think Okita was in the inner courtyard. As everyone was leaving the common room, he mentioned that he wanted to get some fresh air. To be honest, I was a little concerned for him. He was still recovering, and being out in the cold air wasn't going to do him any favors in that regard. Still, that left Heisuke and Sanen. Maybe they're still in the common room. Heisuke had seemed particularly frustrated at being forced to stay behind, and Sanen had been even colder and more distant lately. I was worried for Okita, of course, but I felt there was something deeper affecting Heisuke and Sanen. After a few more minutes, though, I made up my mind. Obviously, I am going to go to the inner courtyard because Okita is the most important person at the moment. For a midsummer afternoon, the air was surprisingly cool, making the courtyard a pleasant place to sit. Okita had said he was coming here, so... He was sitting off in the corner in the shade, gazing up at the summer sky. I turned to look as well. It was a brilliant blue, and a distant breeze was pushing a few white wisps of cloud from one end to the other. How long had it been since I'd last looked up at the sky? Far too long, I thought, as I stretched out my arms as far as I could, soaking in the sunshine and cool, clean air. Then at last I turned back to where Okita was sitting, or rather, where he had been sitting. While I'd been enjoying the summer sky, he'd stood and approached, and now he was right in front of me. My body stiffened, and I felt my eyes widen. He raised a quizzical eyebrow.
You don't need to worry about me. I'm not out here making a plan to escape or anything.
That's not what I'm worried about. True, he didn't seem like he was desperate to leave and join the fight like Heisuke had been.
Really? Well, that's good, I suppose. You are worried about something, though. Something else.
His mouth twisted into a small smile. I decided to tell him. You're still not in the best condition. It isn't good for you to be out in the cold air for too long. He blinked as if that hadn't been quite what he'd expected.
You were worried about my health then? Well, thanks. I'll try and stay out of the cold, all right.
Okita had always seemed a little mean. Until that moment, I would never have thought I'd hear him thank me for worrying about him. I wasn't sure what to say. Both of us appeared to have run out of things to say, and silence fell across the courtyard. I didn't want to scold him and then simply leave from my room, but... That's weird. I never would have thought Souji would ever have an awkward moment. He's always so sarcastic and witty. There had to be something I could say. Something thoughtful. I hope your injury heals soon. Not that. Okita laid his hand on his chest absently and looked away from me, across the courtyard at nothing.
It's not a sword wound, so it'll probably heal fast enough. I'm fine is what I'm saying.
He was right, and it should have given him cause for joy, but his face didn't change. That's because it's not just the wound that he's dealing with. He's sick. He blinked and looked back down at me. Are you thinking about Sanen? He'd made a point to say I, although he'd left it unsaid. I could see he was worrying about the man we both knew wouldn't be fine. Sanen's arm wasn't going to heal, at least not completely. It would never again hold a sword. Okita said nothing. He only cocked his head and smiled. I felt myself blushing. Was I wrong? He only grinned wider and shook his head.
You're a weird one, you know that?
Thanks, just what a girl likes to hear. Well, excuse me for being weird then. I must have looked rather upset, but he'd called me weird for no reason. Whatever I looked like, he seemed to find it amusing because he burst out laughing.
You're really weird. Look, you don't need to worry about me, kid. I got hurt because I wasn't careful. There's only one person to blame, and that's me.
What? No, you shouldn't blame yourself. Okita hadn't done anything wrong. He was following orders and doing the best he could. I didn't see how you could say that what happened was his fault. When I looked up, his smile was gone, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. He glanced down at me, then turned to look up at the sky.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sky today, isn't it?
Yes. The midsummer sun shone down on us, giving our skin a breath of warmth in the cool air, while clouds danced across the blue expanse, flying in front of a wind we couldn't feel. Where were the men who'd marched off earlier now, I wondered. More skipping time. So now the annoying Ito has joined our ranks. And now this time we have to choose investigate rather than return to my room. So apparently for Okita's route, it's like almost all the exact opposite choices that I had to make for Harada. Night had almost fallen, so I decided to investigate. Now, where should I start? My room was in the Yagi house, which was where the captains lived. It had taken me a while, but I had finally managed to figure out how to navigate the building. Still, there were plenty of rooms I didn't dare go near, such as Hijikata's. There's the Maikawa house, too. On the other side of the grounds was the Maikawa house, which was where the soldiers stayed, generally several to a room. I rarely went there, so it was largely unknown to me. If I was going to start looking around, I should go to the Maikawa house or the places in the Yagi house that I hadn't been to before. Investigate the Maikawa house. Once I was quite sure everyone at the Yagi house was asleep, I made my move. My heart leapt to my throat at even the smallest noise, but either luck or skill was on my side, and I made it from my room to the entrance undetected. So far so good. After all, what normal person will be up and about at such a late hour? The Furies? And Sanin? Now, what next?
Good evening, Chizuru. What are you up to? I hope you're not trying to escape.
No, I'm not. Escaping hadn't even crossed my mind, although he wasn't likely to approve of my intentions. Leaving the compound certainly wasn't among them.
Really? Alright, fine. I mean, what would you do out there all by yourself anyway?
You're right. It was a depressing thought, but he was right. Even if I did somehow manage to escape the Shinsengumi, I would lose my best chance at finding my father.
Well, whatever you're doing, you should knock it off. Kids shouldn't be playing around in the middle of the night.
Playing? What are you doing out here anyway? My shaky attempt at a protest drew only a laugh from Okita.
Well, if you see something scary, just make sure you scream right away, alright?
Huh? He sounded rather serious for a moment.
Don't try and deal with it yourself, okay? You understand what I'm saying?
What do you mean by something scary? What could I run into in the Shinsengumi's headquarters that would be that scary? He looked almost surprised for a moment, and then his face broke into a grin.
Oh, you know, like a nightmare or a ghost or something. Or, hey, who knows? You might run into our commander, the demon.
That does sound scary. Especially running into the demon. If Hijikata found out I was walking around the compound without permission. I'm going back to my room now. Well, that wasn't much of an investigation.
Good girl. I'll just go finish patrolling the inner courtyard then.
Ah, so he was patrolling. With one last small smirk in my direction, he turned and left. My shoulders sagged with relief, and I leaned heavily against the wall. Alright, well, before I return to my room, I'm going to stop this video here, and we'll pick up in the next one, see if we really return to our room or if we get waylaid. So, hope to see you in that next video or some of my others, and I'd be so grateful for any likes, comments, subscriptions, or shares with your friends to show some support. Thank you so much for joining me. And I wish you all health, happiness, and safety. Dirili signing out. Bye-bye, everybody.